In this lecture, we're going to learn about copy assignment operators for other types. And what we really want to do is something like this. Suppose we have a point object, as we have been doing for a long time, and we have another car object. This is another class we can set up. And for example, we can specify the car color and the maximum speed. Suppose we can do something like this. But what is really important for this lecture is an assignment like this. Suppose for some reason you want to be able to cross-assign point and car objects, and you want to assign a car to a point object. And if you do something like this by default, you're going to get a compiler error because the compiler doesn't really know how to assign a car to a point. What does that even mean? You have to intervene as the developer and tell the compiler what you intend to do with this kind of assignment. And you do it by setting up a copy assignment operator whose right operand is the type that you want to copy over. In this case, the right operand is the car object. You can see that here. And what we're going to do in the body is going to tell the compiler what we intend to do with this copy. For example, in this case, we are taking the speed of the car and using that to put data into our coordinates mx and my here, and we're going to return the current object by reference because this is returning by reference to allow chained assignment. Suppose this is something that makes sense for your application and you can do this. Now that you have an idea about this, we're going to head over to Visual Studio Code and play with this a little more. Okay, so here we are in our working folder. The current project is copy assignment operators for other types. We're going to grab the code in the last lecture and use that as a starting point because we have a point class in there. So we're going to use that here. And we're going to open this little guy in Visual Studio Code by dragging and dropping here. This is going to work. We have our point class. And what we want is to modify our point class to allow copying over car objects. But before we do that, we're going to put in our car class. So let's make sure we are in the correct location. We're going to add a car header file, which is going to contain the header for our class. And we're going to put in a CPP file for our car. Let's do that. I am going to put in the code in our header file. It is nothing complicated, really. We have a car class. It has two member variables. One is the color for the car, which is an std string. The other is a double, which is going to model our max speed. We have a bunch of functions. We can get the color, we can get the speed. And we have a constructor, which is going to just grab the data we have in our parameters and store that in our member variables. Nothing complicated here. Remember to put in your include guards. This is going to make it easier and safer to include this class in multiple files. After this, we're going to hop over in the CPP file and put in our implementation, and this is going to work just fine. So what we want to do is set up a copy assignment operator, which is going to copy over a car object, and we're going to do that in our point class. We are going to forward declare the car type. Let's do that. We're going to say class and say car. We can do this, and let's say that this is a forward declaration, and we're going to go down and put in our copy assignment operator, which is going to copy over a car object. In this case, we don't want to support chained assignment because that's not going to make sense for car objects that we copy over. And we're going to say operator, we're going to say equals, and we're going to copy a const car object by reference. Let's say C here. I think this is going to do. And we're going to hop over in our body. This is not going to do self-assignment because the types are different. So we don't need to do a self-assignment check here. So we can directly assign the data from our car object. So what we're going to do, and now that I think about this, I don't want to put this implementation in the header here because we don't want to include the full class for the car. So we're going to delegate that to the CPP file where we're going to do the full implementation of this operator here. So we can copy it. I am going to grab this declaration that I did here, and I am going to put this in the CPP file. I can go in front of this function here and do that. And I am going to say that this function belongs to the point class. We can do this. And I'm going to put in my body. And for this to work, I need to include the car class. If this confuses you, please go back to the chapter where we learned about forward declarations, and you're going to know what this means. So we're going to include our car class here. And then we're going to go down and assign the data from our car object to the member variables of the class here. We're going to say mx equals my and equals c get speed, because we want to use the speed to put the data in our member variables here. And I think we also need to do the same for our pointer member variable. So we're going to do that in a separate line. We're going to do p data. We're going to dereference that, and we're going to assign the data from our car. That's going to be the speed, and we're going to put this in. And this is going to do what we want. We don't want to return anything from this function because it is not returning anything. So this should work. Let's try and build this program. I see we have a bunch of squiggly lines here. I don't know why, but this should work. You see that the build is good. This must be Visual Studio Code not making sense of what we have here. So we can go over in the main CPP file and use this program here. What we're going to do, we're going to set up one point. We're going to take out what we had from the last lecture. And we are going to include our car class to make this work. So we're going to grab our car header, and we're going to set up a car object. We're going to say car, and let's call this C1. We're going to specify a color. Let's look at the constructor for our car. The constructor takes a color and a speed. So we're going to say our car is red, and the speed is 200. You can put in whatever you want. We're going to put this in here, and what we want to see is what happens if we assign our car to a point. Let's take C1 and assign that to P1. You're going to see that now C++ understands this syntax because we have a copy assignment operator that assigns a car to a point. And this is really interesting. Some of you might find this weird, but it is something you can do, and it is going to work. Now if we print our point here, and say P1, you're going to see that the member variables we have the speed of the car as the value. And this is really cool. And this is because we did this assignment here. And this is just going to assign the speed of the car to the member variables of our point object here. So the x coordinate, the y coordinate, and the data are going to be 200 as we see here. And that's going to be really cool. Let's build and run and make sure that we have what we expect in our point object. The build is good, we can clear. Let's bring up a terminal window, and we're going to clear and run Rooster. Now you see that our point has 200s inside, and this has assigned the data from our car to our point object, and it is using the copy assignment operator that we did in our point class here, and this is really cool. This is really all I had to share in this lecture. I hope you found it interesting. We are going to stop here in this one. In the next one, we're going to learn about functors. Go ahead and finish up here and meet me there.